Well, look who it is. It's been a while. It's been a minute. I know. Apologies on that. I haven't been able to get around to making some vids here on YouTube. I've wanted to. Just things keep coming up, with life and whatnot. It's been a lot of things kind of pulling me in different directions, but doing okay now. And I thought, what better time to right now to make a vid here and kind of touch base, with the viewers, whoever wants to watch this video. I was also asked a while ago, and I apologize for not getting to this sooner, about my thoughts about the Sixers, how the season ended, of course, against the Raptors in Game 7 on that one of the all-time crazy shots, by Kawhi Leonard, obviously, and thoughts going forward, what the team's going to be, and what my outlook is, basically what I think for the future. Um, and I will start with that, and I do want to touch a little bit about the channel and some things that I want to do. Um, with the Sixers, as we know, it was very disappointing, and maybe in a way it was kind of meant to be. It was like payback from '01 when Vince Carter missed that shot. It's like so ironic, how it all kind of happened. I mean, Vince Carter missed a shot in Game 7 here at Wells Fargo Center that Raptor fans still haven't forgotten and Sixer fans still haven't forgotten. And here we are all these years later, both teams playing each other in a Game 7. Their guy takes another shot, although this time they make it in Toronto. And a shot that they'll never forget, that we'll never forget. It's just so ironic. And then, of course, the team waiting in the wings was the Milwaukee Bucks, who, of course, the Sixers played in '01 and route to going to the finals. But and if they would have done it again this year, they would have gone up against another West Coast team. Back then it was the Lakers, this one dynasty. This year it would have been the Warriors in another dynasty. So it's it's kind of crazy what sports will do. Um, and I know because that shot is still the last moment everyone has still fresh in their minds. Everyone's like, well, that's lost the series, and that certainly helped. But I will tell you that what lost the series was Game 4. And I will always say that what lost the series for the Sixers was Game 4. When they were up 2-1 in the series at home at Wells Fargo Center, the raucous crowd, everything there, everyone was ready for them to take that next step, and they came out flat in that game. And how many times do we see it in sports? When you have a series lead and you have a chance to put a team away and you don't do it, how many times do those teams go on to lose the series? How many times we've seen in Philadelphia when we're down and we somehow miraculously maybe win a game here and there, like that multiple overtime game that was many years ago in Pittsburgh for the Flyers, and they come back to win the series after being down 0-2. Or the Flyers again, against Boston when they're down 0-3 and they win a game. I think it was overtime with Gagne making the goal, and then the next thing you know, the Flyers are winning that series in 7 games, winning the next 4 games. It's like sometimes when you let a team back in, even if it's just that little crack, that's all it takes. The floodgates open, and particularly when you're a good team like Toronto, when you had them, the Sixers had them, and they just they Dennis Green said that they let them off the hook. I mean, they did. They let them off. They had that series 2-1 at home, and not winning that game. And of course, we all know how the rest of that series went. I firmly believe if they would have won that game, go up 3-1 in the series, maybe Toronto wins Game 5 in Toronto. Sixers wrap it up in 6. This thing does not even go back to Toronto. Kawhi Leonard doesn't happen. The bounce, bounce, bounce doesn't happen. None of that happens if the Sixers win Game 4 at home to put the stranglehold on the series. And look, teams got to learn that. And, you know, I know that the Sixers kind of hit the fast forward button by making a trade for Jimmy Butler and then later for Tobias Harris and, making that big 5 starter, whatever, all the things that they did. They still had a thin bench. And that certainly reared its head in the playoffs, certainly against a very good team. And look, Toronto's bench didn't play much better in that series. Okay, it was like, which bench is going to suck more today, But the bench was thin. It was really relying on what the starters did. And Tobias Harris was quiet. He missed some big shots. What was it, in Game 4, Kawhi Leonard made that 3. and then Tobias had an easy look at a three from the corner and missed it. He missed some shots, but they were also using him like Robert Covington. And that's the other thing is with this coaching staff, it's tough because you had that team together. Basically, the whole team that went to the playoffs was basically together for just over a month or whatever it was since the trade deadline. It's tough. It's tough to win that way. And I'm not making excuses, but I'm just saying there were three versions of the Sixers this past season. The one that started the season, the Sixers team after the trade of Jimmy Butler, then the Sixers team after the trades that they made at the deadline, including the moves they made for the bench. I mean, you're talking about three different facets of this team. It's hard to grow that cohesiveness when you're doing that. And in the playoffs, as good as the Sixers starters were, they were a thin team because the bench was not very good. And the fact is also they just didn't know how to use some of these players like Tobias Harris. Now, if they bring him back this offseason, I should say, maybe it's different. I mean, maybe they kind of learn more about who he is and what his strengths are. And that does fall on the coaching staff, and it also falls on the players because the players are on the court together. And if they're not together for a very long time, it's hard for them to figure out, okay, where does he like the ball? Where's this screen going to go? On defense, what are these, what are the strengths here? Where can we get the most out of what we have on the court? It's tough to do that. It's tough to do that and put it together like that. We all play these video games, and we okay, you can bring in any player, and you're at the controls, so it doesn't matter. But in real life, it matters. And yes, they were a very talented bunch, but they weren't together for a very long time. They didn't have the cohesiveness. And it takes time. It takes time to gel. And we see it all the time in sports. It takes time. And again, I'm not using that as an excuse because, look, they were up 2-1 in the series. They should have won that series. They should have won Game 4 and put the Raptors away. They didn't. And they let them off the mat. And then what happened? We all know how the rest of that series went. It didn't have to go down that way. And I know Joel Embiid, obviously, look, he has to take better care of himself. All players eat junk food. Doesn't matter who you are, okay? But you got to cut back on it, okay? And he's a young guy. We all have to remember what were we at his age, right? You have to kind of remember that sometimes. We forget because we're fans. And fan is short for fanatic. And we want it. In this town, we want it because it doesn't happen here all that much, right? We're not one of those charm cities that win all the time. We have to go through agita, many times with our teams. How long did it take for the Eagles to finally win, right? The Phillies have been around since was it 1833 or whatever it is, 18 it doesn't even say it on the shirt now. 18 something, a long time, over 100 years. I almost want to say 1833 or something. 1883, that's what it is, 1883. They've been around since 1883, and they have 2 World Series championships in franchise history. The Flyers have been around since the 60s. They have 2. They haven't won since 1975. The Sixers have been around. Sixers are kind of the youngsters of the of the teams here. They've been around since the I guess the Flyers. I think the Flyers were around are the youngster more than the Sixers, but they both came in around that in the 60s because the used to be, of course, the Philadelphia Warriors, and they moved, and the Sixers came over from Syracuse. The Flyers came in as an expansion team in '67, but the Sixers, what was it, '63 or something like that, whatever they were, and they've only won twice as the Philadelphia 76ers. They won in Syracuse, but then they won 2 as the Philadelphia Sixers in the 60s with Wilt and Hal Greer and them, and then in 1983. I was too young for that one, and I wasn't around for the 60s one. Okay, so it's tough. I get it. I get the frustration. I get we all want it so bad that when it doesn't happen, we just, we throw the blame around. Oh, this guy has to go, that guy has to go. We can't bring the coach back. It's like we always want to make all these moves without understanding and realizing and being rational about that. Well, if you do that, how many times are we going to hit the reset button? How many times? How many times we do that with the Eagles? Oh, this coach, that player. No. We have to do this. We have to do that. And how many of us, when Doug Peterson was hired, thought that that was the right move, right? And then what happened? Wins a Super Bowl. You got to give things time with sports to gel, to mature, for young players to mature. I mean, I can rattle off all these all time greats, Hall of Famers, players that you just have to say their first name, you know who I'm talking about, right? Or you have to say their number of their jersey, and you know who I'm talking about. Okay, all these players had to improve. They all had to work on their craft. They all had something they had to improve on in their game, and in some cases, multiple things. But they did it because they had that want to. They wanted to be great. You know, it's hard to say this after a loss like that, after the way the season ended, but I kind of see that with Joel Embiid. I don't know. I see that sometimes losing the way this team lost. It's like that's what it takes for the light bulb to go off for some players. It takes that. Losing sometimes gets the best out of players going forward. And my best example that I can give you, and I know I'm showing my age here, okay? But the best example that I can give you of a team that had to go through it and had to go through the motions and had to deal with losing every year and to one particular team every year in the playoffs, who was a great team, those years. But this team that kept losing to them, what did they have to do? They had to improve. They had to grow as a team. They had the young players had to grow up. And in some cases, they grew up in those playoffs, in those battles they had with this particular team. And I speak of the Chicago Bulls, who were one of the all-time great dynasties in the history of the NBA. Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, all those guys, right? Phil Jackson, the whole unit, the two facets of those Bulls teams, right? The two three-peats. Well, it had to start somewhere. And back in the late 80s, early 90s, the Bulls couldn't beat the Detroit Pistons, the bad boys. Pistons teams, coached by Philadelphia's own Chuck Daly. Okay? All those great players the Pistons had. Won 2 championships, were always in the mix. Bulls couldn't beat them. And not only couldn't they beat them, the Pistons beat them up. Okay, routinely. And any of you know about the bad boys, know what I'm talking about. And if you don't, well, there's a reason they were called the bad boys. You go back and you look at those film. Some of the teams today, they wouldn't be able to hang with. If they had the rules like they had back then today, some of these teams today would have no chance against that. The Detroit Pistons, and even some of the other teams that I grew up with, those Bulls teams, even some of the teams the Bulls beat in the playoffs those years, the Knicks, there's some big boys on those Knicks teams. LeBron, I know he's athletically gifted, get to the hole. It may have been a little more tough for him against some of those big boy teams that they had back then. Tough teams. Tough. But why did the Bulls have so much success over those Knicks teams? They had to learn how to beat the Pistons. They had to beat that big bad bully on the block. And they did it. And after they did it in a sweep, they went on to become a dynasty. But that's what it takes. You learn by losing. And those teams and those players that lose and have to deal with it, sometimes that's what makes them stronger. That's what makes them what they became because of that. And what we have here is we have 2 young players. And we have to remember this, young players, with a lot to learn and a lot to get better at and improve in different aspects of their game. And they have to get physically stronger, mentally stronger. And it's up to the powers that be in this organization too to give these guys a day here and there. Don't overplay them in the regular season. Hey, why do these dynasties, why are they always in the finals? Why do they always have success in the playoffs, even dealing with injuries like the Warriors did this season? Why? Because they don't have to go 100 miles an hour in the regular season. They deal with it. They'll have a game where a guy sits here and a guy sits there. I'm not saying sit them all the time. I'm not saying baby them. But I'm saying you have guys like Embiid and the health. You don't want him to be worn down when the playoffs come around. When the playoffs come around, that's when we need him to be the strongest. We need Ben. We need all these guys to be strong. Jimmy Butler, obviously they have to bring him back. But we need these guys in the playoffs. We need them to be at the peak. Or as close as, you're never going to be at the peak at that time of year, but as close as you can get to it. Because those are the teams that have the success. Those are the teams that move on. And those are the teams that know how to do it. that know how to go through the grind, and it is grind. Make no mistake, 82-game regular season, with all that traveling and everything, it's a grind. And we can sit here as fans and say, how hard is it? But it is. It's a tough thing, all sports. I marvel at these players sometimes with what they have to do, through a regular season. It's tough, man. I hate getting up, going to work myself. So I get it. I know what it is. And they're in different cities all the time. It's tough. It's tough. But you have to deal with that in a regular season. You have to. You can't just use it up. And then you get to the playoffs and you got nothing left. Or you get into the second round and you got nothing left. And you're sitting games out, with illnesses and stuff. You have to be able to overcome all that in the regular, get through a regular season, try to get through it as healthy as you can, and then be ready to do battle in the postseason, because that's when, as we know, that's when you earn it. That is when you got to be at your best, or as close to it as you can be, because those are the teams that do it. Those are the teams that have success become dynasties. All those teams. You look back at all of them, they knew when to sit guys here and there. The Spurs did it, Lakers did it, Bulls did it, everyone. And maybe it was a little different times, but still, you get a breather here and there. You might not play at your very best in the regular season. We saw it this year with the Warriors. They're early in the season. Oh, what's wrong with this team? Well, they know when to turn it on, and they turn it on when it comes time for the seeding, and then they turn it on when it's postseason, when the playoffs come around. They don't have to be the number one seed every year. They know how to win. They know how to win in the playoffs. And it's not just the Warriors. I mean, look, they're the most recent example. All those years with the LeBron teams in the Eastern Conference. And I get the Eastern Conference wasn't at the greatest, those years. But still, for that man to get to the finals every year, all those years, and show those other guys what it takes to be at your best when the playoffs come. How you got to train, how you got to get ready. The regular season, you just have to deal with it to get to the postseason and then get to the finals. It's hard to do it. And he did it all those years with Cleveland, Miami, Cleveland. Okay, with the Lakers, there's just way too many young guys on that team to do it. But he was there every year until this past season. And it's because he knew what it took to do it. And he knew what he had to do in the playoffs to do it. And how he had to show these other guys, this is how you got to play in the playoffs. This is what it's all about. And obviously he had some great players around him too. Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, Kyrie Irving. Yeah, some great players, but LeBron was one of the big reasons why those teams were there, along with those other players, and they knew what it took. I mean, Dwayne Wade knew what it took to get through a grind of regular season and then in the postseason. He won before with the Heat when Shaq was there, when they beat the Mavericks. He knew what it took to win in the playoffs. So him and LeBron together were like the perfect match. These guys knew what it took. They went to that next step. Bosh came in, Ray Allen came in, and they did it. And Ray Allen, of course, won with the Celtics before. Knew what it took. Now the Sixers don't have that. They don't have players on this team that have been in the finals, have had that ultimate success, or even lost in the finals, for the most part. I don't believe they had any player on this team that were in the finals. I'm forgetting someone that was off their bench or something. So they really had nothing, to that regard. Well, the Raptors have Kawhi Leonard. He knows what to do. He's been there. He's been a Finals MVP with the Spurs. And that he is exactly the player that Raptors team needed. You talk about teams that had struggles in the playoffs, the Toronto Raptors, Exhibit A. What do? They get Kawhi Leonard. Now they're in the finals. They're 2 games away from winning a championship with Kawhi Leonard, aboard. And sometimes that's what it takes. But will the Sixers go out and get Kawhi Leonard this offseason or Kevin Durant? Probably not. So they're going to have to do it with this unit, And make no mistake, the success of this team going forward, it's all about Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. And they can have Jimmy Butler, they can have Tobias Harris, or fit in another player or two here and there into these slots. It's all about Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. If these two guys do not progress and get over that playoff hump and stay healthy when the playoffs come along and develop a mid-range jumper and get, become more willing to drive to the hole and not just kick the ball out, Ben Simmons, If that doesn't happen, we're not going to win. If it happens, oh, we're going to win. Oh, we're going to win. Look, I saw how dominant Joel Embiid can be. And I point back to game 3 of that series. You had Marc Gasol and Serge Ibaka looking foolish in that game against him. They had no answers for Joel Embiid in that game. And these are two of the better defensive big men in the league. And they had and veterans. No answers for Joel Embiid in that game. Kawhi did. No one did. He was unstoppable in that game. And I saw that. I know what this guy can be. And I know he has to be consistent like that. Yes, he does. But the greats, they're the ones that go ahead and do it. They're the ones that go ahead and put that work in. They're the ones that go ahead and make sure that they're going to be that player. Unstoppable, unguardable. And we've seen it all these years. We've seen players come in and do it. Didn't start that way. Maybe they showed flashes of it. But what happens? They put in that work. They change who they are. To grow up as a person and as a player in this league. And the teams have ultimate success. The Warriors had to do it. You kidding me? The Warriors lost in the playoffs for years. It wasn't until those guys, that core that they have right now, they had to deal with losing. They had to deal with it, and they grew up. And yeah, they changed the coach. I get that, Mark Jackson to Steve Kerr. But they had to grow up. If those players didn't grow up and become great, the players that we know today, that team's not winning anything. Even if Steve Kerr comes along. It's about the players. The mentality has to be there. It has to be there. And my hope, as a Sixers fan, is that the mentality will be there with Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. I have to I have to give this thing the time. I can't just say after a couple years, oh, it's over. Let's just hit the reset button. You don't win that way. I'm sorry. And I know we're frustrated with Ben Simmons, and he did himself no favors with his exit interview with being nonchalant about things. That might just be how the guy is. We as a fan base have to hope that he has that fire inside to change, to get better, to develop a jump shot. I mean, there's many players in this league that had to come in and couldn't shoot. Kobe Bryant couldn't shoot. Jason Kidd couldn't shoot. LeBron had to work on it. Kawhi Leonard couldn't shoot. But they worked on it. They got better. They were young players. They're kids. They had to learn. They had to improve on it. But they knew that that's something they had to improve on, and that's what they did. And we'll see with Ben Simmons. Time will tell. Time will tell. We'll see next season what's going on. Seasons to come. He is very athletically gifted. He is. He's got handle like anything else for a big man of his size, 6'10" or whatever he is. But he's got to become more mentally tough. Physically, and he's got the physical tools. He's got to get that mental toughness now. And this guy's been in the playoffs now for the past few years. And part of the big reasons why this team failed in the playoffs in the second round was because of Ben Simmons. Not putting it all on Ben. I'm not. Joel Embiid's at fault too. Kawhi Leonard. Jimmy Butler's at fault too. Tobias Harris. All these guys are at fault. When you lose a series, you lose a series for a reason. It's not just because of one or two guys. It's a team. The team failed. The coaching staff failed. And I will say this, speaking of the coaching staff, I thought Brett Brown did a much better job in the playoffs this year than last year, certainly against Boston. Much better job. He was not outcoached by Nurse with Toronto. I thought Brett Brown had a better postseason. And look, the rotation we can talk about. But again, these guys have only been together for how long? It's tough. It would have been tough for you, for me, for anyone that coaches this team when they're only together for that long, even though they had some superstars on that team. It's tough. Cohesiveness. You got to learn about these players. Again, I'm not using it as an excuse. I'm not. But it's all around. It's all around. You lose a series in 7 games, it's all around. And it was a tough series. It was. And they played that team tooth and nail. Even with JoJo being hurt, being sick, or whatever it was, Ben Simmons not shooting like normal, afraid to drive to the hole, when the defense came on him, they still went to 7. It says a lot about the talent in this team. And they came a lot closer to being the Raptors than the Bucks did. So, it shows the talent on this team, but now you got to keep this thing together. And that's up to Elton Brand and the powers that be. They got to bring Jimmy Butler back, max contract, whatever. Tobias Harris. And even if you don't bring Tobias Harris, you got to get someone else. And I understand about Brett Brown. I understand that, the jury's still on Brett Brown as a head coach. But I will ask you this, who else are they going to get? Who was going to come in? You can say Mark Jackson. Okay, maybe. But it's not that easy just to get another coach and to say, okay, here's a collection of players, go do it. It just isn't. I know some teams make it look easy. Steve Kerr made it look easy with the Warriors, whatnot. Look, it's very rare. It's very rare. I've watched this game for a long time. I've watched sports for a long time. It's rare. And it takes time sometimes. We have to just have that patience. Phil Jackson didn't win right away. And I'm not comparing him to Brett, okay? He didn't win right away. How many years did it take for him to finally get by the Pistons and finally get it with the Bulls? It takes time. You have to have that patience, and I get it. We're not a patient fan base here. We're not, because we don't always win. And with the Sixers, we were bad for so many years with the process, and we finally get a taste of it, right? We're back into the playoffs, losing in the second round to Boston, but okay, we took a step. Next year, they go out and they get Jimmy Butler and Tobias Harris, so all of our heads are up through the clouds. We think this team's at the final. No, they're definitely going to be in the finals now. It's a letdown. I get it. And look, Joel Embiid, a lot at fault. Ben Simmons, a lot at fault. But they're young players. They have to learn from this. They have to get that fire. And maybe they get that fire from losing. Maybe that Kawhi Leonard shot will always be known as the turning point for this franchise, for this team, to get better, to take that next step, to get by the teams like Toronto or Boston in the second round, to go to the Eastern Finals and do battle with whoever's there. Maybe it's a Toronto if Kawhi stays there and doesn't jet off to the West after this season. Maybe it's a Boston. Maybe it's a Milwaukee. Maybe it's a team that we don't even know right now. But it's taking that next step. You got to grow. You got to grow. Young players got to grow. And we have, as a fan base, have to allow them to grow. And it's tough. It's going through growing pains. I know. But I've seen this with other teams. And those teams that exercise the patience to let these players grow to become great players, they're the teams that reap the benefits from it. I mean, there were people, years ago in Golden State wanted to trade Steph Curry. They didn't think he was going to become the player he is now. What happened? Sometimes it's the moves you don't make that lead to the greatness. And I've seen it. And look, we're putting a lot of trust in young players. I know, with Ben and Joel, we're putting a lot of trust in them. But they got the keys to the castle. Because, again, make no mistake, the success of this team going forward, no matter who else is on this team, is about number 25 and about number 21. And that's it. Period. End of story. If it doesn't work with those two, it's not going to work. And the jury's still out. People can say here, they can leave comments, that's never going to work. Okay, you have the crystal ball? I don't have the crystal ball. But all I can speak about is other past experience with other players. There's a lot of immature players that came into the league. A lot of immatureness. And they had to overcome that. They had to be to have that light bulb go off and become, those great players that we all know. It doesn't happen overnight. It does take some time. And we have to understand that here as a fan base. It will take some time. But I know there's a lot of ifs. But if it's meant to be with those two, and they become the players that we're all hoping they become, that they have the physical tools to become, we're going to have some great years around here. And we're going to remember that Kawhi shot, and we're going to remember losing to Boston in the second round, last season, and we're going to have those memories. But that's what's going to make it all the more sweeter when we finally do it, when we win, when we're the Sixers are the team hoisting up the Larry O'Brien, right? Just like it was for the Eagles. Why were we all as happy as we were? Because we had to go through all those losing seasons and all those seasons where we came close, and got kicked in the gut and below. Over and over and over and over and over again, and then finally we got it. That's what made it so great, and that's what makes sports so great. Because you never know. You see something different every time you watch a game. So what I'm telling you, to the people who want to watch this video, to fellow Sixer fans, have some patience. I understand. It hurt me as much as it hurt you watching that ball go in the hoop for Kawhi Leonard and the Raptors in Game 7. But I will tell you, it didn't have to come to that. This team should have won this series. When they were up 2-1, they should have won Game 4. If they would have won Game 4, it would have been over. It would have been over. Raptors wouldn't have won 3 in a row against the Sixers. It wouldn't have happened. Sixers would have won that series. It was an opportunity lost. It's a young team. Jimmy Butler, maybe not. Tobias, maybe not. But JJ, maybe not. It's a young team. The core, the two main cogs of this team are young. And we have to remember that. And like I said before, it sounds like a broken record. I'm sorry, but it is growing pains. And you have that with teams that have some, young core players. I see the Phillies now make a mistake in the outfield, and they were up 3-1. Now it's 3-2 in the top of the 6th, with one out and runners on first and second. Youth sometimes is a tough thing to watch in sports, and when you have talent in youth, it's tough, man. And there are a lot of exciting moments and great moments, and then there are moments that just frustrate the hell out of you. It is. It's tough, man. It's like that across the board in sports. You have some young, talented players, but with that, you're going to have mistakes. And you're going to have those growing pains and those moments where we want these players to grow before our eyes. But it's going to take time. There's no fast-forward button, with these players. And we just have to understand that. You don't want to wait too long for these guys. But have some patience. Have some belief. If we learned anything from the Eagles, with Doug Peterson and all that, sometimes you just have to believe in it. You have to have some trust and faith in it that it's going to work. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen right away, but it will happen. You just have to. You got to keep that. Keep that faith about it, and believe in these players and believe in the coach. Because there's a lot of talent on this team. There is. And if they can, and again, it's up to Elton, it's up to players. Because, look, players decide where they want to go. All right? But to me, to bring this team back, I think would be big because it grows that cohesiveness. That's something they didn't have in the playoffs. And yet they still went to Game 7. And that, again, is a testament to the talent on this team. But they got to keep this together now. And I understand there's been some stuff, Jimmy, with Lakers and the Nets and all this and that. I believe when the dust settles, he will come back here. I think he enjoyed his time here. I think the fans, obviously, this is a great place to play. When the team's winning, this is a great basketball city. It's deep-rooted with basketball. It's always been. And it's one of the best atmospheres in the playoffs that you'll find in the NBA. And look, I don't think that was a small thing for Jimmy to see that, and for the fans to chant his name and all that. Players remember that. And I know there's a lore with LA and LeBron, and if the Nets try to build a super team and this and that, I get that. But sometimes it sticks with those players about the experience they had at a certain place. It's like Kawhi. I mean, look, as a Sixers fan, I hope he goes to the West. Hey, Kawhi, LA, go on. Just leave leave Toronto. Then Drake can go away. Maybe Drake will go. He can probably take Drake with him when he goes, okay? We all know Drake is such a loyal person. So, but anyhow, he has like a warrior. Doesn't he have like a warrior tattoo or like the name of the players on his? There you go. Yeah, he's Mr. Toronto. All right, but anyhow, hate the Drake. But I would not be shocked if Kawhi stays there because, look, you talk about a guy has the keys to the castle. He's got the keys to a country, okay? So it would not shock me if Kawhi ends up staying with the Raptors. As a Sixer fan, I hope he goes to the Clippers or the Lakers. Just go, leave. That's one less team for us to have to deal with going forward. But I would not be shocked if he stays there. Those fans have been very receptive of him. Obviously, he's done great things there. But, it's not a small thing. If he stays there, I think that's a tip of the hat to the Raptor fans because that's the reason. And money. But you have to want to be where you play, particularly if you're going to invest long-term in a city or a place. That has a lot to do with it. So if he does stay in Toronto, well, it's because of the organization, but it's also because of those fans, those crazy Canadians. More so than Drake. Okay. Same thing with Jimmy. If he stays, obviously, look, the max contract, yeah, that's a big reason why he would be here if the Sixers were able to pay him more than other teams. But I do think it's also the experience, seeing what this fan base was like when this team is having success, being there for the playoffs, having his name chanted, over and over again, it sticks with a player. So if he does come back, I think we all have to tip the hat. I mean, look, this fan base for being who we are. We get ridiculed a lot, as if they never throw anything. They never do anything in any other city, like Boston yesterday, throwing things on the ice. Oh, but that doesn't happen there. That only happens in Philadelphia. Oh, they would never do anything. Oh, yeah, they do. Oh, yeah. When you mix alcohol and bad calls in a fan, particularly rabid fan bases, you're going to see stuff thrown onto the court or ice, or maybe unkind things being yelled over and over again. Some things like booing, for instance. So it happens elsewhere. We get the brunt of it because everyone loves to hate the Philly fans, but it happens everywhere. So but yes, it's. I think it is one of those things that, like I said, I mean, there is something to be said about the passion, and when players sometimes stay or want to go someplace because of the passion of the fan base, I mean, yeah, I mean that has something to do with it. So, as a Sixers fan, I'm hoping that they do bring this team back because there is a lot to be said about cohesiveness, about growing it with those players, allowing this to grow. Not just keep hitting reset, but we have to get this guy. No, we have to get that guy. We have to get that guy. We have to get this. No, it doesn't work that way. You want to have that. You want to gel. And I think that this team has a chance to do that, going forward. And yeah, they have to work with the strengths. I mean, look, the coaching staff has to get better, too. It goes hand in hand. I mean, you can't use Tobias Harris like he was Robert Covington. That's not going to work. So if you do bring Tobias back, I mean, you got to learn who he is as a player, and he's got to get better too. Look, he was brought here as he's not just a 3-point shooter, but when you have an open look, particularly from the corner, which is like the easiest three to make, and you're clanging him off the back iron, got to get better. Everyone had to get better, right? He's not immune to it. He's got to get better too. I mean, look, one of your things is you're a good 3-point shooter. You come in here, and game 4, Leonard makes a big three, and you have a big three to make, and you miss it. What can you do? Again, everyone's to blame in this thing. There's not one player without blame in that series, the way it ended. The coaching staff as well. Although, like I said, I don't think Brett Brown was outcoached by Nurse in the series. But there's something to be said, too. I mean, look, you have, 3 straight 24-second shot clock violations? It's tough, man. Close game like that, you're not going to win that way. And the Raptors kind of opened the door at times for them, too. There were some turnovers. Kawhi missed a free throw. They gave the Sixers chances. The Sixers just didn't want to close the deal. But that's my take on it. I believe it was MC Eagles who wanted me to make a vid about the Sixers. I'm sorry it took me a while to get to this. I know now we're in Game 4 of the NBA Finals by the time I get around to it, but that's my take on it. My long-winded take, as I usually do. But I'm still optimistic about the future. It does rely on Joel. It does rely on Ben. And this team has to figure it out. Look, I mean, the regular season, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And there are going to be games where you got to sit Joel. You got to. You got to sit him down for a game here and there. I'm not saying that players are soft or weak. I'm saying that this is what other teams have done that have gone on to win. And they were ridiculed for it. The Spurs were ridiculed for it. But guess what? Those championship banners hanging, you think they care about the ridicule? It is. It's a grind, a regular season. And there's a lot involved. And we need these players, as young as they are, we need these players to be at the top of their form as close as they can be when the playoffs come. Because if that's the case, if that happens, we might see a lot more Game 3 Joel Embiid than the rest of that series. And that's a great thing because he was dominant. Like I said, that game 3 against Toronto, I mean, you can go back and look. He made Gasol and Ibaka, whoever was trying to defend him, look foolish in that game. And that's how dominant he can be. And that's what we want to see. And if we get that, this team's going to go a long way. And we're going to enjoy some long rides in the playoffs and some good times. And listen, as a fan base, as a city, we've earned it. We've been through some tough times. Only went to the one finals there with AI. Obviously, back in the day with the 70s, the Sixers couldn't close the deal. Losing to the Lakers, losing to the Blazers. Finally won in a sweep over the Lakers. And, yeah, it took Moses Malone, right? But that team had to learn. And players on that team had to grow up, like Dr. J. They had to grow up and get better. Work on their craft and become the players that, are household names. Champion. NBA champion. You can never take it away from someone when they win. And there's many great players who never won. But you can never take away a championship from a player. So we're hoping for great things in this town. And I still believe we are on the cusp of becoming one of those great teams. But it takes time. These guys got to learn. And hopefully this past series last year against Boston, hopefully these are things they learn from and they grow from. Because we need that. We need this team to grow. And it's tough. Like I said, man, you can't hit that fast forward button. You have to let this thing grow. And I get it. I get the trepidation. I get everyone wants to trade Ben Simmons. I know. I've said it. And I'm guilty, of saying that at times myself. But I have to remind myself, and I have to remind anyone watching this, it takes time. It's not an overnight deal. When you have young players, young star players, it takes time. And it just does. So we have to understand that. And hopefully next season we have a longer run. Hopefully it doesn't end in the second round next season. Hopefully it doesn't come down to a Kawhi Leonard shot in Game 7. Hopefully next season, if they're up 2-1 on a team like Toronto with Game 4 at home, you win that game. You put that team away. Because if you don't, you're just asking for trouble. And we saw that. It's a teachable moment. It's a learning moment. And that was tough. Like I said, man, it came down to that Kawhi shot in Game 7. But to me, Game 4 lost in the series. So anyhow, that's my take on that. I just want to touch on this channel here. Gotta sit here. My throat's real dry right now, like I usually do. I did a lot of talking. I just want to touch on the channel here. Obviously, we're getting close to the summer. That means that after that is the fall. and that means it's football season. So obviously, it's me. It's about the green. Philadelphia Eagles. And Season 6 of Season of the Fan coming up in the fall. Look forward to that. Another season. You get to ride with me with my Philadelphia Eagles fandom. So I will be doing that, at the end of August, I guess. I'll start that in earnest, and we get through another season. I look forward to it. I'm excited for the season to come. I'm happy they locked up, extended, I should say, the contract to Carson Wentz, because I do believe he's one of the bright, young quarterbacks in this league. And I full respect to Nick Foles and what he did. Obviously, Super Bowl 52 MVP. Went on a little run with him last season after Carson got shut down. And health is going to be a big part of it. But, I do think that was a good move by them. It shows faith in the player. And I think they're going to be rewarded with that because he should have been the MVP. Let's not forget those years ago. If he doesn't go down in L.A., he's the MVP of the league. And it's not Tom Brady. So, Tom Brady got the MVP. We got the championship. But he would have been the MVP. And I know health. And we saw that with Joel Embiid. It's the same deal. Health is a big thing. He's got to stay healthy. But I think we have to remember what he was. In that season, he was dynamic. And that's Carson Wentz. That's the type of player. Look, last season, coming back from the knee, I think they brought him back too soon. Never really got going. He showed glimpses of it, but never really got it going. But I believe this season coming up, I think we're going to get back to seeing Carson for what he is. He's a great young player. Dynamic young player. We forget. I think this fan base forgets. Because of the success they had with Nick Foles winning a Super Bowl, winning a playoff game last year with the double doink and everything. But Carson's the future. It was the right move what they made, and it's about Carson Wentz going forward. And we all have to hope he stays healthy. I mean, look, that's the great equalizer. We all know this. But if he can, we're going to have some great years with him. He's in my mind a very good young quarterback in this league, and other teams would like to have him as their quarterback. A Raider fan called in radio this week, said, "Oh, I would take. You guys don't understand how lucky you are with Carson Wentz." So we'll see. Look, there's going to be many battles within the division, the different, with Dallas and everything coming up. But I do believe that this is going to be a great season, and I look forward to it. I think they made some good moves. And Carson, it's his team. He's got the keys. He ride with him. So Wentz wagon, right? Let's get going again. Look forward to the Eagle season as always. But I also want to get back to my roots too with this channel. With Jersey, the Jersey game, right? Jersey head that I am. I'm gonna do some Jersey reviews for you guys. Some newer run Mitchell and Ness stuff, maybe some other stuff. Some other stuff I've had in my collection too, so you guys get to see that. I want to do some more with hats too. Shout out to Major League Hats. He does a great job in his video series and his channel. Very enthusiastic with the sports, and I love that. He's a great collector of hats and a great sports fan, and he always has great content in all of his videos, so make sure you check him out there, Major League Hats. I've always loved hats too. I mean, maybe in the videos I always get into the jerseys, but I've always loved wearing hats and have many hats. I'm a man of many hats. I have a lot of hats in the collection. I want to kind of show some of those, and there's others that I want to get. And I don't want to steal his thunder from his videos, but I want to do some reviews too of some hats. I think I'll do them more in sets, more than just one. Maybe I'll have a set of 4 or 5 or whatever, 2, 3, 4, 5, something like that. When I do some reviews, but be on the lookout for that. Won't be all the time. Maybe more so it'll be about the jerseys, but every now and then I'll throw some hats in there. But yeah, shout out to Major League Hats there. Does a great job with his vids. I'm looking forward in a couple weeks. My buddy Big Slim will be over for the weekend with a buddy of his from Arizona, and me playing the host. I got, of course, and his birthday's coming up too. Shout out to Big Slim. So I told him I'd take him to a Phillies game. He's never been to a Phillies game at Citizens Bank Park. So I told him I'd take him to a game, and his buddy from Arizona. I'll treat them to a game, and also, since, hey, the Philly, let's show them around, Big Slim's always told me he wants to go up to the Art Museum steps. He's a big Rocky fan. He wants to go up the steps. And we've always meant to do it during, past trips here, just never really got to it. But I told him that, I'll make sure we do that this time. So maybe I'll do some video there, and we can do it up in that for that weekend, and you guys can see some of the fun and the, or we'll be very tired by the time we get up those. But I'll bring some of you along for the ride there too, and I'm never afraid to show off my hometown here in Philadelphia, and I got a chance to show it off a little bit, of course, to my buddy Big Slim, but to his buddy too in Arizona, from Arizona. So hey, why not? I'll do it up. So I'll take you all along with that trip. We'll take some video there and get into it. But go up the Rocky Steps, the famed Art Museum steps. So of course, I want to film some of that. And, we always have a good time when Big Slim and Mighty Fan get together. When Jersey heads get together. It's always a good time, so I look forward to that. And, of course, my buddy Mark M. of the Season of the Fan Philadelphia Flyers edition. We're getting together, too, here and there. We're going to do a Phillies game. We're doing a Lehigh Valley Iron Pigs game in August, so good times to come in the summer with good friends and that's always appreciated. That's always something to look forward to. And, yeah, so I'll bring some of that to you, to you, the viewer, as well. And, we'll get through the summer, and then before you know it's going to be the fall and football season. And then you know what it is. Mighty Fan gets full into Eagle mode. But anyhow, that's going to do it for me. I've rambled here for 50 minutes. I'm also going to try to not go as crazy with my talking in some of these videos. I know I can do that. I just love this stuff. It's just one of those things. It's hard for me to narrow it, to hurry it along at times. But I thank all of you for hanging in there with me. If you did, if not, I can't blame you. 50 minutes is a long time. But I did have a lot to say because I've been absent here from YouTube for a while. Just a lot been going on. I hope you all understand, and I am fully invested in this channel still. I love making my videos on YouTube. You'll also find me on Instagram under Mighty Fan. I make a lot of mostly pictures. And there I am trying still to catalog the collection. It's a slow process. But I am trying. That's one of the things I like about Instagram is it does allow you to kind of catalog everything you have in picture form. So, I'm still working on it. It's been a few years, process here, but I'm still working on it. And so you can still find me on there if you want. I always try to get some pics in there, some video content too, but mostly, of course, the videos here are on YouTube. So, thanks for all the support and continued support. Hit that subscribe button if you like the content, and if you're, a sports fan. Lots of sports content on this channel. You never know what you're going to see. Obviously, a lot of Philadelphia sports content with the Eagles, of course, for the Season of the Fans series. I do those videos on playing the PS4, well, as good as I can play it. I'm not the greatest, but I like Ben Simmons with his jump shot. I got to improve. But I'll get back into that, too. I know I haven't posted a video game vid in quite some time, but, rest assured, I'll get back into that, too. Coach Mighty Fan there at the controls. But anyhow, lots going to happen here throughout the summer, and of course as we go forward in the football season on this channel. And again, I appreciate all the support. Thank all my viewers, for all the support, and leave those likes and comment, and always appreciated. Hit that subscribe button. And, keep it going. So, yeah, shout out to my buddies, of course, Big Slim and Mark M. MC Eagles as well. Thanks for, the comment in the video wanting me to do a Sixers vid. I hope that it's been a long time coming, I know. But I hope you enjoyed it. And, of course, to Major League Hats, too. I want to give a shout out to him again. Doing a great job in his channel and his content. Go hit him up, too. Subscribe to him. If you love sports, well, if you're watching this vid, you probably do. You want to hit him up and see what he's got, because he's always got some interesting stuff going on, and he's taking you on tours of places like minor league parks and lid stores and all sorts of stuff. So make sure you hit him up, and that's going to do it for me for this vid. Thank you, for hanging in there with me for a long time. But like I said, I had a lot to say because I've been missing for a while here on YouTube. So, I apologize about that. I will definitely be, more active, making more videos, more content. So, be sure to hit that subscribe button and check me out. You'll be seeing plenty of more content to come. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching. Take care, and you be good. I'll see you around the channel.